This is Ask Joe number 176, all about money. Hello and welcome to episode 176 of Ask Joe, Home Studio Corner Podcast, hashtag Ask Joe Gilder. I don't care what you call it. I'm just glad you're here. Big shout out to everybody live. I'm pointing to you live on the stream. If you can make it to these live, it's fun. You can ask your questions. I tend to pull questions from those who make it live. I know that's not fair, but I'm going to do it anyway. I also have questions from Facebook. So if you want to be in on all of that, please do. And you can see the schedule over at homestudiocorner.com/calendar. You can sign up and subscribe to that so you actually get that calendar in your calendar and see when these are happening. But I'll make it easy for you every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Time. I'll be right here. So take your lunch break around this time, or if you're over in Europe, you're just chilling out in the evening. If you are in Australia, I think it still works kind of early-ish morning for you, so I'm trying to hit all the different areas, but I think that's working. So what we're going to talk about today, I've got questions from you already, and I'm going to rap for a little bit about all the topic of today, which is setting your prices. Whenever I talk about this, I get a lot of feedback from people and a lot of people with questions. So hopefully this will be one of those episodes that I can point people back to because there's a lot to discuss here, and I've experienced a lot of this, and I've tried a lot of this, and I've failed and succeeded at a lot of this stuff when it comes to setting prices, and I want to share a lot of that with you as well. So thanks for being here. If you're here live, if you're listening to just the audio podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, thank you. I appreciate it. Leave a comment below. Let me know who you are and where you're from. I'd love that too. All right. Somebody in the chat is asking about my 335 over there. I'm not going to tell you because that's not the topic today. Today's topic is setting your prices. Now, if you've never charged anyone for work in your studio before, that's okay. That's legit. Chances are you've at least thought about it, and you at least hope to one day do it. And so that's why I'm talking about this. If music will always and forever be your hobby and you have zero interest in charging money for your services, then this may not be for you. However, if you plan to charge for anything, if you run a business, if you're in sales, I mean, these are more global principles that I'm going to break down for you in terms of studio stuff. But I mean, really, it applies all over the map, right? It's business stuff. And since I run a couple different businesses, I think I have a unique perspective to speak to this, and I've made a bunch of mistakes, which I want you to benefit from so that someone gets some benefit from the mistakes that I've made in the past. So, I'll speak from my experience as a freelance audio engineer, from my experience as running Home Studio Corner, and also experience running dueling mixes and other things. So, setting your prices. First thing I want to talk about is should you even charge for what you're doing? Should you charge for audio? Should you charge for your services as a recording and audio engineer? Short answer, yeah, you should. Long answer, well, you need to be good at it. And you need to have some skill. But in short, I think, yes, absolutely, you should and you can. So here's the thing. Some people will say, I don't feel like I'm good enough to charge. Well, guess what? You'll never actually feel good enough to charge for something. There's a level of, I mean, you ask anybody who's charging, whether it's $20 to mix a song or $20,000 to mix a song, there's an element of they don't feel like they're worth that. Or an element of they don't feel like they're good enough to merit charging that. Now, I can't really speak for the guy charging $20,000, but for everybody else down here in the normal world, there's always an element of, man, are people really going to pay me for this? Am I really worth their time and money? So that's something you got to deal with. And I think the easiest way to deal with it is to just start doing it, to actually start charging for something. So that's kind of the first thing is there's nothing wrong with charging for your services. You're not a jerk. You're not taking advantage of people. I mean, the whole societies are built on people doing a service for other people and getting paid for it. In the old days, maybe it was a bartering system where, you mow my grass and I'll bake your bread. But these days, money's typically the thing we exchange. However, little side note, we could do a whole show on bartering and how that is a very valid way to build up your client base, to get work, to do work, and to maybe not get into the exchanging of money yet if you're just not ready to cross that barrier. Examples of barters I've done in the past, I mixed a song for someone and he designed an album cover for me. Great trade-off. Another one, I produced a single for someone, and I think he designed a website for me, or maybe he did another album cover for me. It was something. He did a bunch of design work for me, different logos and different things I needed for Home Studio Corner. He was a designer. His wife's a songwriter. So I hired musicians and tracked the song, recorded, mixed, mastered it. And in exchange, he did a lot of design work for me. That's a great way to do things, and especially with friends and people you already know, because perhaps that's easier, or at least a way to ease into this whole exchanging your skills for something. So once you get past the bartering system, and I'm never beyond bartering. I was just talking with one of my VIP members, Reed Rainwater, who's probably going to help me through a kind of a barter type thing, help me booking some shows for my band, because it's not something I have really the bandwidth for or the skill to do in exchange for some of my services to him. So anyway, there's lots of ways to do that, and I would encourage you to explore those alongside also exploring actually getting paid actual money. Okay? So we have to kind of get to a point where you're going to be okay with selling your services, okay? You just need to get over that. You need to just put yourself out there and try it. I know that's an oversimplification. It can be crippling to think about putting yourself out there, but what do you think is going to get you over the hump? Getting to a point where you feel good enough, or putting yourself out there and backing yourself into a corner where you have to be good enough? I tend to lean towards the second one. For example, when I needed to write a bunch of songs, and I wanted to write like 50 so that I could have a big pool of songs to pull from for my next album. What did I do? Well, if you've been around Home Studio Corner long enough, you know I told you about it. I put out a video and an email to my email list saying, and probably on the podcast too, saying, hey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm giving myself 12 weeks to write 50 songs. Guess what I had to do then? I had to do it, right? Even though 10 weeks in, I'd only written like 27 songs, I still hunkered down. In the last 2 weeks, I wrote whatever the difference is, 13 songs. Anyway, it was amazing and that's not a reflection of me and my awesomeness, by the way. It's a reflection of how we can kind of trick ourselves or back ourselves into a corner where we have to fulfill in the thing we said we were going to do. It's all accountability, right? Okay, so the whole point of this rant and this entire episode really is to talk about setting prices. And I have your questions here. I want to get to those. I want to cover a couple things as far as actually setting the prices. The first thing, and a few people have asked this, Johnny Lipsham, I know you asked this somewhere, I think on Facebook, talking about the difference, or how do you price things? So how do you structure it? Now, the dollar amount we'll talk about in a minute, because that's different, but how you structure it is kind of the first step. Do you want to structure it at getting paid by the hour or getting paid by the project? There are benefits to both. I tend to lean towards, as much as I can, getting paid by the project, meaning I will charge you this much to mix a song. I will charge you this much to record a guitar vocal demo, record and mix that for you. I will charge you this much to do a full band tracking session. Now, all of these things, you can take your hourly rate, whatever you think you want to make per hour. A good place to start is, what do you make in your current job? If you have a day job and you would like to start making money as a musician, as an audio engineer, is it reasonable to just take whatever your hourly rate is at that job and try to bid jobs out at that rate? It may make sense, it may not. If you have a job that's minimum wage or a lower hourly rate, then that might work fine. If you are a CEO of a big Fortune 100 company and you're making 7 figures, then no, your hourly rate's probably not going to work for a local band wanting to come track something. So common sense is going to come into play, and we'll talk about pricing, specific numbers a little bit later. But there's some place to start. But are you going to charge them by the hour or by the project? Why I like charging by the project is I'm being held accountable for my results. They are paying me X number of dollars to give them this product. So if you're paying me right now, if you went to my website, and this could change if you're watching this in the future and the price is different, that's just the way things work. But today, if you were to ask me to mix one of your songs, right now it'd be $250, and you would pay it, and I would mix it, and you would get a mix. Now, will it take me an hour to mix your song? 8 hours? 4 hours? I don't know. It depends on the song. But that's irrelevant to you as the client. What do you want from me? You want a good mix. So I've done a few of these in the last couple of weeks where there were 2 of them. It took me about 2 hours to do the mix. It just did. It just happened that way that it came together, and that was it. Now, are they thinking, okay, Joe, I'd like you to go back and work for 2 more hours just to make sure you got your time in, or 4 more hours, or whatever? No, it's literally just I charged you a certain amount for that time. Now, if I had flipped it around and said, hey, I'm going to charge $25 an hour to mix your song, and I only mix it in 2 hours, well, guess what? I have no incentive to mix efficiently, because the quicker I finish the mix, the less I get paid. So why would I do it in 2 hours when I could stretch it out to 4 or 8 hours and get paid $100 or $200, right? So it's to me, it's not incentivizing yourself to work efficiently and to work well. Now, are there situations where it might make sense to do hourly? Sure. If you've got a musician coming in and they tend to just take forever to record, and you know this, or you're just being hired to do a tracking day and you don't know how many songs it's going to be, and they're just going to be there for one day and that's it, then you just figure out what you want to make that day as like an hourly rate and go from there. But more often than not, I will do deals based on whatever the finished product is, and there's a number associated with that. Now, if it's a bigger project, for example, they want me to come out to them, record the band, produce the band, then do all the overdubs and the mixing and the mastering, well, then I'm going to take into account all the travel time, what I want to make per day. If I'm over there for several days, I just kind of do a day rate, and it's this much per day to kind of hang out and do this stuff and piece together the rate. But at the end of the day, what I'm giving them is a single number of this is what it will cost you for me to do this work, to give you the finished whatever it is, whatever the product is that you're creating, okay? So I'm a big fan of charging by the project as much as possible, because now it's another way of holding yourself accountable, and it's a fun game. If I charge you $100 to mix a song and I mix it in 4 hours, then I've made $25 an hour. If I charge you $100 to mix a song and I mix it in 2 hours, I've just made $50 an hour. That's kind of fun to do. Now, the assumption here is, of course, you're doing good work. The 2 hour mix can't be crappy and you just feel good about doing a mix in 2 hours, but the mix turned out bad. We're always assuming you're doing excellent work, but sometimes it just takes less time than others. And it's kind of fun to do that. For me, especially as an entrepreneur, I like to see how much I can get out of a single hour, right? Or if I get paid for a project, how quickly can I do it and still do it well to where my hourly rate is a really cool rate, right? Okay, so those are some things to think about. And what else? There's something else. I'm going to get to your questions in a second. But those are kind of the 2 big things. Okay, here's the final thing I want to talk about. There is a legitimate, let me try that again. When trying to think about what to charge, like literally what dollar amount, you can do things like I said before. Take your current job that you have, figure out if you have a salary, figure out what your hourly rate is, and then just try to bill your jobs out based on that rate. That might make sense. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what you want to make, what you think you should make. What matters is what the market is willing to pay, okay? You may look at something like an Apple Watch, and you may think it's the most ridiculous product ever. No one would pay whatever it is, $300-$400 for a watch. But then go out and look, and they're selling. So people are paying, okay? So in a much simpler way, that's how it is in your studio. You need to just ultimately, then people email me all the time asking this, and ultimately I'll say, just pick something. Just pick a number. What would you like to make? And if they say $1,000 to mix a song, then I'll say, well, you can try it. Or more often than not, people guess really low, like, oh, I'd love to, maybe make $100 to mix, and so they put it out there, and that's no one can pay you money until you give them a price. So even if it's the complete wrong price, guess what? You are not setting up the rest of your life right now. You are not committing to always charging that amount. You can, wait for it, change your prices. You can change them every day if you want. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you can change them to suit what the market will allow. What price will the market bear? Now, what do I mean by that? That sounds like marketing business book terminology. Literally, what are people going to pay you? And the best way to know is to, what do you think? Let's stop for a second. What's the best way to know what people will pay you? Some people will say you ask them. You do a survey. You ask some of your friends, hey, how much would you pay me to mix your song? And you're getting real feedback from real people. I say that's a bullcrap way to do it. Absolutely, who cares? I could ask you a question, hey, how much would you pay me for this brand new Maserati? And you'd say, oh, I'd pay you $100,000. And then I say, okay, can I have $100,000? And you'd say, no, of course not. What you would pay in a scenario doesn't really matter. The only way to know what people will pay is to see what people will pay. So what I do with Home Studio Corner is a great example. I've experimented over the years. I've been selling like tutorials and courses on Home Studio Corner for 7 years. And I've tried lots of different prices. And guess what? How do I know if a price works? If a survey tells me it'll work, or if I put it out there and people buy it? Guess what? It's the second one. I know for sure that it was worth the $47 or the $147 or the $297 if someone comes in and pays that, okay? So that's the ultimate thing. Just set a price and start quoting it to people. And maybe for a month, you quote people this number. And if no one takes you up on it, one of two things is wrong. The price is too high, or you're just not good enough and you're not winning them over. You're not convincing them that you're valuable, okay? Those are kind of the two things I think that would be at play. Or, it could be that's just not right. But you can always just try things out. Here's a great example. So I've been talking about this lately. I've attended lots of business seminars and read business books and been in business masterminds. And a lot of people I talk to, they don't understand a business like Home Studio Corner. They hear that I have a VIP membership that's $10 a month, and they think, oh, there's no way you could grow a business on $10 a month. You have to charge way more than that. You have to have different tiers and levels to where some people are paying you $100 a month and some are paying you $1,000 a month to have really, one-on-one access to you. And maybe that is the way it's done in some other industries. In the business industry where you're having a business coach who's coaching you and helping you make thousands and thousands of dollars, then it makes sense to pay them $1,000 a month. I don't know. That's not the business that I'm in. And yet they want to put Home Studio Corner in that box. And so I think, well, they're more successful than me. I should do what they tell me. So a year or two ago, it's actually like early last year, I started to raise all my prices. I took VIP membership from $10 to $20 a month. And the prices of most of my tutorials went from around $50 or so up to $150, and there was a couple that were like $500 and $1,000. And now, was I trying to rip people off? No. I really do think if you apply what I teach you, it's worth whatever the price tag I put on it, and that has to be a part of the conversation. You have to be good at what you do and deliver on it for anyone to pay anything for it. The number of the price tag is in some ways irrelevant, but as long as if you believe in it, then you can put a price on it and see what happens. The problem is nobody bought at the higher prices. Some people did, okay? It's not like no one did business with me anymore, but there was a change. It was more of a barrier, less people were buying, and the theory goes, if you charge more per thing, you don't have to sell as many to make the same amount of money. And that's kind of true, but all in all, it just didn't feel right to me. It felt like these prices were out of reach for a lot of people, and I was still selling them some, but it felt different. I wasn't selling as many. I wasn't selling them as regularly, and I had to do a lot more discounting to get people to buy. Those are all red flags. I know that now. Those are all red flags of, hey, it's just priced too high. So if you say, I'm going to charge you $1,000 to mix a song, and you keep quoting that to people and nobody buys it, then try doing something different. Try saying $200, $100, and see if you get jobs that way. If you do, then now you know it was a pricing issue, and now you can mess with that pricing. I always say if you just pick a price, even if you have to err on the side of it being low, and then you can always increase the price as you go. You can also decrease the prices, which is what I just did at Home Studio Corner. If you've been paying attention, just last week, I believe, if you go to homestudiocorner.com/store, you'll see all my products have different prices. They are all, in the opinion of most people, too cheap and way cheaper than they used to be, because I feel like that's the right price. And I've already, even with me not really promoting any of them this last week, people have been buying them because they're at the price that the market looks at it and says, yeah, that's cool, I'll buy that. Before, they were priced so high, they had to really think about it, and then they decided no most of the time. Now they're priced at a spot where people are saying, and not everyone, but more people are saying, yeah, understanding EQ for $47? Yeah, absolutely. That's a no-brainer, I'm in. So you want to find that sweet spot. And it may take you years to figure it out, but you set a price, you see what happens, you pay attention, and then maybe change the price, and then pay attention and see what happens. And what'll probably happen is you'll start too low, you'll get some jobs, you'll raise your price, you'll get maybe some jobs, and eventually you'll stop getting jobs. You'll have priced yourself out of the market. So then just dial it back down and find that spot where you have enough work. If you're completely booked, then your price is probably a little too low. If you have nothing booked, your price is probably a little too high. There are plenty of other factors at play, but those are the biggest things I think that will make a big difference in your ability to continue to do business and to continue to hone things so that you're making money, but also you're providing a price that is actually valuable to the market so that you can get the most people into your system as possible and provide the most value and all that stuff. One final point, and then we'll jump into your questions. A lot of people, and I've seen this in the chat, and I've seen this on Facebook, and people have asked me this all the time over the years. They'll say, hey, is it a good idea for me to do work for free and until I build up a portfolio and then charge for my work? Now, that as a strategy, sure, absolutely, that's fine. I think that's actually a valid strategy. Here's the thing. I've had people who contact me and say, Joe, I put an ad on Craigslist and I said I will record and mix your song for free and no one took me up on it. Oh, and they're just, you can tell in the email, they're just huffy. They're pissed off that they attempted something and it didn't work. And their conclusion is, therefore, that somehow they conclude that doing work for free isn't a good strategy. Now, I think it is a good strategy, and I think it can work really well for you. But here's the thing. You're still selling something even if the price is zero. You've got to get that into your head. Even if you're not charging a dime for something, there is still a cost involved to that potential client. For example, if you saw an ad on Craigslist and it said, I will record a singer-songwriter demo for you for free, and you're a singer-songwriter, guess what? The only way that's going to be valuable for you is if you think you'll get a good recording out of it. But if the person doesn't give you any reason to believe they're good other than they own a microphone and a copy of Pro Tools, then guess what? If as a songwriter and a musician, I'm not interested in that. I would much rather go with someone I know who I know knows how to record. Honestly, I'd much rather pay someone so I know I'm getting good work and they're kind of on the hook for doing it because I paid them. Okay? This actually ties into a question. Someone said, when I posted this on Facebook yesterday, let me find it. Okay, it was Michael Jensen said, how do you know when you're ready to start charging? I've mixed a few songs, but I've never tracked a band before. I assume I'll need to do a couple of projects for free. That way I can make sure I've improved my mic placement and other techniques. If I messing up on tracks that the band didn't pay for, so they're less likely to be upset. So his premise, his assumption is because they're not paying for it, they're not going to be upset. Well, guess what? They are paying for it. Especially if it's a tracking session, they got to lug all their equipment over there. They've got to rehearse for this session. They've got to spend all day or all weekend at your place. And then at the end to get a crappy product, guess what? They got the sore end of that deal and they will never come back to you and they might tell their friends. So you've got to be good. You've got to be excellent. You've got to deliver, okay? And you've got to do that even on your free stuff. Because nothing is free. They are having to invest their time and their effort into something. And if anything, it's a disadvantage for them because they can't even withhold paying you because it was a free gig. So you could do horrible work and they have no recourse other than to just accept it and move on and find somebody else who can do good work. So that's why I think it's probably better to charge sooner than you're comfortable, because then you're on the hook and there's money involved, and that can make you be a little more serious. You're not thinking, oh, this is free, they won't care if I botch this. You're thinking, oh, I really want to do a good job for them because they're paying customers. Now, is that going to be the case with everyone? No. Maybe you are self-motivated enough to where even if it's free, you're going to do excellent work, and that's great. But people don't realize that if you're offering something for free, you've still got to sell them on doing it. I offer free things to get on my email list, right? An ebook. Coming up in the next month or so, I'm going to offer something way more awesome than an ebook, almost like a mixing course. So be on the lookout for that. But just because I could say free ebook, free mixing course, some people might sign up for that, but I've still got to sell it. I've got to say, hey, if you like my YouTube channel, then you need to sign up to the newsletter at homestudiocorner.com/newsletter to get this free mixing course that's coming out. and I've got to give them reasons to do it. Why? Because they're still paying. They're not giving me any money, but they're paying me with their email address and permission to send them emails. That's a big deal. That's like their personal space, their inbox, right? They're on there. They don't want to see anyone there that they haven't invited and who doesn't bring value. So they're going to be hesitant to give that out, even if you're offering all sorts of free things. It's the same thing with music and audio. Just because it's free, this applies to music too. If you're a band or a musician and you're putting out music, free music doesn't mean anything anymore. Music, honestly, for the most part, people are expecting music to be free. So for you to say, hey, get my album for free, they'll be like, yeah, so what? Give me a reason to want to listen to your album. Because I could go get 20 free albums over here from these other artists that are giving them away for free, or I can listen on Spotify or Amazon Prime, all those things. So that's a whole different discussion for another day, and I'm sure we'll cover that down the road. But free isn't free. Just like that old poem, what was that patriotic poem? Freedom isn't free. Free stuff isn't free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. People are still paying for it with their time and their effort, and you got to respect that for sure. Okay, that's enough of my rant. I've got more to say for sure, but let's jump in and get into your questions, and we'll go from there. Boom. Whew, I'm having fun with this one. A lot of things I've wanted to say, and I've said in little bits and pieces here and there, but I like to have it all in one place. Hopefully this will be one of those episodes that we refer people back to a lot. By the way, if you're here live, or if you're listening to this on YouTube or on the podcast, however you're experiencing this right now, if you're enjoying it, would you please share it with your Facebook crowd or on YouTube, however you share Bear, would you share this? Because I think more people need to hear this. And I know I'm talking about pricing, and now you're thinking, I'm going to share it with my competitors, and now they'll know how to... Oh, come on, just share it with people. I would love to reach more people, and I'm trying to up my game here with everything I'm doing so that I can reach and help more people, and also grow my business, and guess what? Sell things to people. Shocker. Did you not know that I was selling things to people? Have I been tricking you this whole time? Okay. So I'm going to go into the questions. I've got a bunch here. I've covered some of them already because they kind of shaped how I did that first section of the podcast. But this episode may go a little bit longer, and I hope you're okay with that because this is an important topic, and I don't want to cut it short. All right, we'll go with one of the questions from my boy Tiki, who is over in the UK, but also you're moving back to Romania. Was that right? Anyway, you need to fill me in more on that, by the way. You mentioned something, but I didn't get it all. So anyway, he says, how do you start charging someone you kept working with for free? It's a great question. So maybe you start it. So that's the awkward thing. If you start doing free work and you don't make it clear that this is a one-time deal or that I'm just doing this for a season, then you end up with people who are always expecting to work with you for free. Now, there are kind of two ways to approach this. One, how can you continue to do that for free to them and get some other benefit out of it? Now, that one's a little trickier. Like there's the bartering thing we talked about earlier. Or one thing I've done, here's a great example, bartering. So I'm in the band, right? People are playing in my band. First show, August 29th, Nashville. It's at some dive bar called Springwater. If you can come on, it's gonna rock. So there's 5 people in the band: drums, bass, guitar, keys. But yeah, so there's 5 people, and so up to this point, we've had several rehearsals, and I've not paid them a dime. Okay, now don't judge me. We all agreed to this first. I didn't say I'd pay you, and then I didn't. They're all friends of mine. It's Tim Horsley, Joel Bazaire, Spencer Holloman, Frankie Holloman, also known as Frankie Baranko as their artist name, and then Scott Johnson on keys. So they all agreed, yes, we want to support you and your music. We've been itching to play in a band. Let's do it. But they also, knowing that my aim is to have some success with this and to pay them, right? And ideally to pay them out of the music that we're making, as opposed to I just pay them out of pocket and the music doesn't make any money. I'd love for the music to be profitable so that it can all kind of be its own ecosystem. Anyway, one of the things I told him was, hey, here's the deal. Starting out, it's not going to make much money. I'm aware of that. I do have some things I think I can leverage, Home Studio Corner being one of them, where we can do some events, maybe some online concerts and things that I think will make some money, and I will pay you every penny of it. To start, but for the first few shows and rehearsals, I'm not going to be paying you. If that's a deal breaker for you, I completely understand. Let's talk about it. But if you're willing to put in a little bit of work on the front end, invest a little bit of your time on the front end, it's going to pay off because I'm going to make this work. And so, but one of the things I said was, in the meantime, you play in my band, my studio is yours. That's kind of the deal we made. So that doesn't work as much for Tim and Joel because they have their own studios, but they've been playing with me for years. I've paid them a lot to play on my album, so that I have a little bit of equity there, I think. Joel, tell me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong. But with Scott and Spencer and Frankie, they're all musicians as well. They're artists. They write songs and perform. So we've had several sessions where they've come in and we've tracked a song of theirs, and that's kind of my payment for them being in my band. It works out really well to the point where I think Frankie's going to take off and be the successful musician, and we'll be her band as opposed to the Joe Gilder band, which is totally fine because she's awesome. Check her out, Frankie Barranco, Barranco, on YouTube. We got a song. We just recorded. It's not out yet. It's going to be amazing. Anyway, so there you go. That's an option of working, getting benefit in a sideways way for people that are doing something. You're doing something for free. So I get bandmates, they get recording time. Pretty good deal. The other option is to just talk to them about it, especially if you're getting to the point where you are booked and you are booked solid, whatever solid looks like. If it's, you have 2 nights a week that you dedicate to studio time and you're booked out for the next 2-3 months, and your friend wants to do a free session, you can say, hey, listen, first of all, you can just say, hey, I'm booked out for 3 months. But even then you can say, listen, I've gotten to a point where I'm making a side living from this, and I can't do. I've outgrown doing free work. Here's what I'm charging, and you've gotten that for free for however many projects it's been. So you've gotten a deal, but I'm going to need to charge you if we're going to keep doing this, and that's your decision. Maybe you just decide you're going to keep doing it for free, but as you know, there's some downsides to that too. So, or maybe you give them a discount, but they do pay you something. I think that's totally reasonable. You are providing a real service, and it's kind of up to you to decide if you want to keep doing that. If you enjoy the work, figure out a way to make it work. Because ultimately, nobody wants to take advantage of anybody. Everybody, in general, would like to engage in situations that are kind of a win for everyone. Okay. Here's one from Louie on Facebook. Says, have you ever turned down a gig even knowing you needed the money or the work? I was in a financially rough patch, and I took on some nightmare projects in desperation, but in the end, it wasn't worth it. Well, that's a good question. I've turned down some gigs before, but if I'm in a spot where I need the money and need the work, I'm not really turning down anything. So to me, I would question whether it wasn't worth it. My guess is you learned a lot. And I'll throw this out there. If things didn't go well in a session, I would venture to say almost always that it's your fault in the sense of you didn't set expectations. So you were going to do a mix for somebody and you didn't specify how many revisions they could get. And so you spent the next 3 months going back and forth doing 60 versions of a mix. And there's no recourse because you didn't set expectations beforehand saying, hey, it's this many. Just the other day, I had a client. He was giving me lots of revisions. My first mix just wasn't in the direction he wanted, so we had to do some changes. We got to the third one, and I said, hey, I kind of completely remixed these vocals because I wasn't happy with them. I know this is the final revision. You technically don't have any more revisions, but if you want to make some more comments on the vocal, feel free to do that. But I gave it very specific, and he came back, and he was great. He said, Joe, this is awesome. Thank you. That's very generous. Could you also make these 2 tweaks to the vocal and the guitar solo? I know it's outside of our agreement. You already made that clear because I make it clear on the invoice and on the email that I send to him to first set up the session. He says, I'm happy to pay you more. Just tell me what the price is. And so, like, if you've set it up in advance, they're asking to pay you money, which I didn't. I just said, no, this is fine. It'll take 2 seconds to turn the bass up. It's great. No problem. But it's up to you to set expectations. That's the biggest thing. You cannot over communicate enough when it comes to this type of stuff. And ultimately, I hope I help you avoid some of these mistakes. Some of them you're just going to have to fall into. And then once you do and you experience the pain of that mistake, you probably won't make it again, and it'll end up being a good thing. But yeah, expectations are huge. Okay, I mentioned this earlier. I didn't get to this. And Aaron Brown asked, he says, I'm getting back into the mixing game, and somebody wanted him to produce a hip-hop beat or how much he charges to produce a hip-hop beat, and his response was, nothing, I've got to earn my stripes. If a person likes what I've produced or mixed and wants to pay me, then fine. But right now, I'm still climbing that ladder of charging and how much to charge. What do you think of this? See, the thing is, if someone's asking you how much to charge for something, to me, that is a green light to throw a dollar number out there, even if it's $20, just to have it out there for all the reasons we said before. I think there's a lot of value there. Someone is coming, literally, what you're doing is when you say, no, man, I got to earn my stripes. What is that? You don't have to earn your stripes. If you don't know what you're doing at all and it's not a good job for you, then maybe you say, okay, no. But otherwise, if you're interested in that and you think you could do a good job, and guess what? You probably can, even if you don't think you can. You can make yourself do a good job. I'd say take it on. Even if it's just $20, you're going to do this project. You're going to do it extra well because it's a paid project you didn't expect. You're probably going to learn how to better do hip-hop beats, and you're probably going to take on more of those projects in the future because now you dove into that world. But if you say, nah, man, I mean, if you want to pay me, that's fine, but no, I'm earning my stripes. I call bullcrap on that. Someone is literally, it's like, I don't have any cash on me. They literally are saying, how much of this will you take to do this job for me? And you're saying, oh, I could never. That's the wrong mindset. You say, it's this much, let's do it. And you just do it, okay? That's what I think anyway. Daniel said, I'd love to know how to go about getting clients when starting out and what would be a reasonable rate to charge as a new engineer. I've been recording myself for years and took an independent music production course in college, so I'd love to get my home studio off the ground. It's a great question. First of all, you've got to have something to show that you know what you're doing. You don't have to be the most amazing engineer in the world, but you have to have some level of skill. And what I mean is you have to have been working on projects. So Daniel's question, he says, I've been recording myself for years. So I'm assuming you have a whole portfolio of of EPs and albums and singles that you've produced that you could say, hey, go to my SoundCloud page. Here's stuff I've done in my studio. If you don't have that, that should be your number one thing that you're going to do. Whether for free or paid, probably for free, you need to get in the studio and produce stuff. You need to stop watching these videos. Literally, if you couldn't email me right now and say, hey, Joe, here's my latest project I worked on, or here's a SoundCloud link of the last 5 projects I completed in my studio, or even one. If you can't do that, I'm begging you, pause this video, shut off your browser, close iTunes, however you're consuming this. If you're here live, shut it down and don't consume another piece of content. Don't read another book, don't watch another video until you have finished a project, okay? You have to. If your goal is to make some money doing this. If your goal isn't to make money doing this, you need to do it anyway. Why? Because there's absolutely no way for you to get better without actually doing the work and actually working on and finishing projects. It's almost mind-boggling to me that people would rather, like, I'm sure some people here, and I'm not saying you're bad. I'm just saying, like, you're sitting here, okay, how should I charge for these things? But you haven't finished a project in your studio in years. Don't care. Doesn't matter. I'm never going to hire you if you can't say, here's what I've worked on. No one's going to hire you because you say, I'm serious. I watch Home Studio Corner. Nobody's going to hire you because you watch Home Studio Corner. They're going to hire you because they've heard what you've done and they believe in you. Now, the one caveat to that is if you're a phenomenal musician and they know you through like the bands that you play in, that may be a different story. But still, you should have stuff where you can say, hey, here's some stuff you can listen to. Even if it's just 1 or 2, you need something. So, Daniel, to your question, yes, since you already have that in place, it sounds like, then, like I said before, I would just start charging something. And a good starting point, I think, is $25 an hour. That's not minimum wage, and it's not a ridiculous amount. And so if, like I said before, I like to charge by the project, not by the hour. So maybe you're not charging technically $25 an hour, but if they're asking you to record them for an afternoon, and that's going to be 4 hours, you say $100. And just try it and see what happens. That could be too high, or it could be too low. But if you're making, like right now in your day job, you're making $15 an hour, and you think there's no way I could charge $25 an hour, I would challenge you to rethink that. And honestly, I would just challenge you to try it. I don't care if you rethink it, just try it and see what happens. Because you have a skill. Whatever your job is, you're getting paid $15 an hour. I'm not saying there's no skill involved there, but doing this work is a very skilled work. A lot of people look and say, man, I have no idea what you're doing. You're clicking around and you're making things happen. It's amazing. So they already think you're impressive. So why not go ahead and charge them at least some reasonable rate, like $25 an hour? That number can change, whatever you think it should be, but it could be something. What other questions? Let's see. I've covered all of these over in the Facebook. Here's one from Scott. He says, when you're just starting out, is a fluid rate a good idea? Working with a band's budget versus having a set rate? Or will that come back to to bite you if the bands and artists talk? So what he's saying is, like, if I charge this one band that I know doesn't have any money, I charge them less, and then I quote something different for somebody else. You know what? I don't think there's any shadiness in that. You're offering discounts to people and not to others. I would say have a set rate that's like maybe the most that you charge. And if you need to discount it for some people, I'd say don't do that a lot. If you're having to discount everyone, then your prices are too high. But if you need to discount some to get the business, I say go for it. And here's the thing. No one's talking about you. They're not out there comparing, hey, you worked with Scott and he charged you $100, but we worked with him and he charges $150. What the heck? People change prices all the time. I've had things in my Amazon wish list and I thought, oh, yeah, it's $20. And then I go to finally order it and it's now $30. Is Amazon shady? No, they just changed the price. Probably because they saw they were selling tons of them and they thought, well, it's too low because we're selling so many. Let's raise the price and see if it still sells at that same rate. Guess what? I probably still bought it anyway. So anyway, there you go. Okay, there are a couple questions in the chat. There's so many people here now. I'm having a hard time finding. How are you invoicing your clients? Is there an app for that? Honestly, for the first several years, PayPal's great. You can create an invoice in PayPal. You can put the terms in there and just send it, and they pay you that way. Yes, PayPal takes a percentage. You can send them, open up a Word document with a invoice template and send that to them and have them write you a check. That's great. There's no fees with the check. But to me, it's just a lot of people I work with aren't in Nashville, or it's just we're busy. I'm not going to put something in the mail. We just PayPal and I eat the fee and it's fine. Or raise your prices by 5% so the fee isn't a problem anymore. You got to think you're a business now, okay? If you're trying to find the cheapest way to save a penny everywhere, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So just be a big boy, accept the 3 to 4% charge that comes through something like PayPal, and take the money and do the work. That's what I think. Some people are asking about charging and how actually collecting the money. I'd say what I do for the most part is I charge at least 50% up front. So to book the session, to actually get it on my calendar is 50%. And then once it's finished, the final 50. Now you can word it in such a way that you don't get the final files, the final finished versions until I get my last 50%, because there are shady people out there, but I've never run into that just personally. And honestly, lately, like with the stuff that I'm doing, a lot of the custom mix videos and stuff that I'm doing, I just have them pay up front. It's $300, go. And then once you pay it, I get you on the calendar, you send me the tracks, and we go. We do this. So there's lots of different ways to do it. If you're trying to cover yourself, I would definitely not do all the work without any payment. I think payment gets them some skin in the game too. Also let you know that they actually have any money. If you quote them $1,000 for a project and you say it's $500 to book the session and they balk at that, well, if they balk at the 500, then they're definitely going to balk at the 1,000. So you kind of saved yourself some work for free. Somebody said, "Are you an LLC?" I'm not. I'm a sole proprietor. Don't sue me now that I just told you that. But in the state of Tennessee, in the way I run my business, there's not a lot of reason to be an LLC at this point. Unless I start leaving more money in the business to invest in other things, and that might make sense. But anyway, no, there you go. Do I do a contract or do I use an agreement? I don't have them sign a contract. I put the terms in the quote or in the invoice. So as they're paying me for something, the receipt has the terms on it, which is very simple. Like if it's a mixing gig, you're allowed up to 2 revisions. That's it. And I just put it in writing, and then I adhere to it. Someone says, "Are you insured? Is your studio insured for liability?" Not specifically. It's in my home, so it's covered under my homeowner's insurance. I don't have separate liability insurance. But again, most of the work I'm doing that I'm getting paid for, a lot of it is with people all over the world. So they're not coming into my studio. There's no liability because no one's here. And then the stuff that I'm doing here, a lot of times it's more friends, people I know well. I'm not really having strangers in here all that often. So yeah, maybe there's a glaring something missing there that I'm missing out on, but I I don't think I am. Tiki was asking if I can share my term specific. I don't have the specific text in front of me. It's literally something along the lines of, your mix includes up to 2 revisions. Thanks for the business. That's about it. I'm not going to answer any more about insurance. That's just not the point of this conversation. So the difference, so when you're doing tracking and mixing, do you do the same rate or is it different? So for any kind of recording work, I tend to charge more like by the day. So I figure out what my day rate is going to be, what I want to make in a given day. And then I kind of cut it in half. So if it's a morning session, it's half the day rate. If it's an afternoon session, it's half. And that's kind of how I do it, because I try to just guesstimate how long it'll take. And I do it in terms of days and half days, and I charge them that. If that makes sense. So, and then for projects I know, and I'm still, and still even in doing that, it's sort of hourly, but it's really just a project rate. You want to come record vocals? Great. Here's my half day rate. Come over at 9 a.m. We'll do it on Thursday, Wednesday, whatever. And so I've figured up my day rate and my half day rate based on what my hourly rate needs to be. But then ultimately, I'm just charging them a set amount. So if they finish at 10 a.m. and we're done, I'm not going to refund them 2/3 of the rate. That's what we agreed to. And I've got some free time. I can go book more sessions or work on other projects and things like that. Do you do any mastering work? Yeah, I do. I've got a mastering session on Friday just for a single. I don't do a ton of it, but I do. I'm more of a mixing and recording and producing guy than mastering, but I do some. Okay, I think those are all the questions that I got. Let me just quickly check over on the Twitter sphere. Haven't been on Twitter as much lately. I don't see any questions that came through. Great. All right, I think I'm done. I mean, we've gone for, almost an hour. So this is a longer episode. So there you go. Someone's asking, what's my mixing and mastering rate? Now, normally in these types of videos, people say things like, well, I'm not going to share that with you. I'm just giving you principles. But yeah, I'll give it to you. You can go to my website right now. Go to homestudiocorner.com/store and then click on services, and you'll see it right there. Now, it may change. So like I said before, I've lowered all my prices, including prices for doing mixing and mastering, because I was essentially pricing myself out of the market to where I just wasn't doing a lot of jobs because I didn't really want to. And so it was too high and people were not buying it. And I was like, that's fine. I don't really feel like doing client work. But I've missed it. And I think it's a shame that I've kind of not done it for the last couple of years as much as I would like to, because it's really fun. It's really engaging. And it really is a catalyst and kind of a good starting point for a lot of the stuff we do in Home Studio Corner and helping you. So I've been doing more. So currently it's I think it's $250 to mix, $300 for a mix plus a video where I show you how I mix the song, and then mastering I believe is $50 a song. So those people say are too low, and it's probably true. If I continue to be booked out at those rates, then I will probably raise them. But for now, I did a deal a couple months ago, a month or so ago, where a mix for $150 and people jumped on it. So then I bid to $250 and people are jumping on that. So we're going to stick there and see what happens, but I'm out of time. I got to go. Thanks for watching. See you next week.